So yeah, today we have Adam Edwards. He's the founder of Metric Theory, also a family friend, also from Hawaii, which is pretty cool. And Metric Theory provides technology-enhanced service engineering, marketing, and display advertising services for their clients. And Adam leads a team of more than 40 paid search and Facebook advertising professionals. And yeah, built the company from the ground up. So really excited to have him today. If we can welcome him to the
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. Mackenzie said I'm from Hawaii. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. We'll see if we can get this to work, and if not, that's fine. The jokes will be worse, but So in terms of my background, I grew up in Hawaii and kind of hopped around a lot. I went to school on the East Coast at Georgetown, which if you're a kid from Hawaii, you see a bunch of kids in pastel-colored shirts and pop collars is quite a cultural shock for you. I studied international politics there. That's what you do after a few too many episodes of West Wing and being in DC. And after I finished college, I actually went a slightly different route and took a job in sales at a technology company called Meltwater. From there, hopped around again and worked on the 2008 presidential campaign. So I was part of the field staff in Ohio. A guy from, our high school was running for president, so someone I followed for a while, had a political background. After that, I moved back to DC, started working at a political consulting firm, but mostly handling, might be all set, cool. Mostly handling Google and Facebook advertising for political and nonprofit clients. Cool.
I'm just gonna call the people to come.
Oh, I did come.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have identified myself. Have a great time.
Thanks.
Thank you. So started working at a political consulting firm, came to a few really important conclusions. One, I did not want to live in Washington, D.C. anymore. Two, I did not want to work in politics anymore. But I also realized I kind of liked Google advertising, Facebook advertising, this world of digital advertising was really appealing to me. And so from there, I actually went and took a job back with that original company, Meltwater. They were starting a new unit in paid search advertising, so those are just the paid Google ads. Let's see a picture in a second. And we were building kind of a startup within a larger 800-person technology company. We were meant to build a software product. We ended up building an agency and selling our services as kind of a digital ad agency within a larger software company. And myself and my 3 co-founders who we'd started with at Meltwater went off and started our own company, which I will tell you about in a second. So I think one valuable takeaway from my experience leading up to starting a company is to put yourself in positions where you're challenged and where you're uncomfortable. I guess I should caveat that if you're starting a business now or right out of school, then I would probably go with something that you are more comfortable with, or they feel you're an expert at. But I think a lot of the reason that I was in a position to do what I eventually did, I put myself in a lot of places I was not necessarily comfortable. That had to do with going to school on the East Coast, a very, very, very preppy school that was very different than what I was accustomed to. I switched majors to join the School of International Politics. I grew up in Hawaii. International affairs not kind of foremost in terms of things that you would consider studying, but I realized that's where all the smartest students were, that's where all the best professors were. My GPA didn't do as well because I was around a lot of kids who were a lot smarter than I was, but it really pushed me outside of my comfort zone. Same with right out of school. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a very good salesperson. I'm still not a very good salesperson, but I felt like that was going to push me to develop some skills that I didn't have and attack some of those weaknesses. So, and I think that carries into the work that I did on the campaign. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone who's comfortable knocking doors in trailer parks in rural Ohio to tell them to vote for someone they're not necessarily inclined to vote for. But same idea of putting yourself in a position you're not necessarily comfortable with. So you're going to start a business, start around something that you are comfortable with, you're excited about, you're good at, in terms of developing the skills to get there. You start a business, you're going to have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, so trying to put yourself in those types of positions. Let's see if I can get this to work now. That's all right. Okay, so metric theory. This is kind of our spiel that we're presenting to clients, so when we take some of those slides out of our decks, I'll try and give you more real background. We're a digital advertising agency. So we provide services in primarily paid Google advertising and Facebook advertising, and some display advertising as well. What does that mean? Well, the Google ads, that's everything that you see here, so we're in charge of everything from writing ad copy to choosing keywords to, there's a lot of analytics involved, I think is really the core of it, in terms of deciding how much we want to pay for a click on different keywords, right? So we might be willing to pay $2 on a Tuesday for a search from San Diego, California for inflatable stand-up paddleboard, but maybe we're only willing to pay $1.12 for a click from someone searching that in Madison, Wisconsin on a Saturday. So we're looking at a lot of data and helping our clients basically invest their ad dollars as effectively as possible. So, yeah, a lot of data. I'm going to hop through some of this a little bit. We handle display advertising as well, YouTube ads, Facebook ads. So I think one other thing, I out of curiosity, in terms of people who have started or looking to start a business, how many of you guys are trying to start a software technology company versus a services company? So show of hands, who would be more excited about a software technology company? Okay, how about a services company? Okay, more than I thought. I think that's maybe part of what I was going to say. I think especially in our neck of the woods, in the Bay Area, it's very sexy to start the big kind of technology startup that's going to disrupt X, Y, or the other thing. There are a million businesses out there to be started around just providing a service and helping people complete a certain business task more effectively or more efficiently than they already can, right? If you find something you're really good at, I mean, that's basically how we started this company. When we were at Meltwater, we were sitting there trying to sell a software. So we had a technology partner, Kenshu, who's a big Sequoia-backed, paid search advertising software. And we were a partner to help basically sell that into the mid and lower market. And we failed and we failed and we failed. And basically me and another guy who's one of my co-founders now, we were the only ones on the team who'd actually done any paid search advertising before. We were there to help generally consult with a bunch of really talented salespeople and product people on how we sell this software. And after 3, 4, or 5 months of not selling anything, we finally said, you know what, we're looking at all these accounts, we're trying to sell people who, should be driving a Toyota Corolla, Lamborghini, right? Like this software is not what they need. They need someone who can help them learn how to drive, who can help them basically run the accounts more effectively. And so from there, the business really took off. So in general, I think there are a ton of services businesses out there that provide a huge opportunity for growth. So where are we now? We manage about $110 million in annualized ad spend on behalf of our clients. We have over 200 clients that spend anywhere between $10,000 and $700,000 a month on their online advertising. And we work with all kinds of companies. We now have 65 employees with our headquarters in SF. We have an office in Denver. And I just got back this week from 2 weeks in New York where we just opened our third office as well. And how do we do it? I'll talk about a little bit in a second. Some of our clients, we work with all kinds of clients. We work with Too Faced Cosmetics Company, heard of Cliff Bar. We work with a lot of B2B technology companies just by nature of being in the Bay Area and having a CEO who comes from a tech sales background. So that's a little bit of background on the company. So how did it start? I kind of rushed through that part. So what was the real story? It wasn't as smooth sailing as we thought to start the company. So I mentioned that myself and my 3 co-founders, we worked together at this company, Meltwater. Meltwater is a software company, and the CEO of that company wasn't really excited about growing and scaling an ad agency, and that's what we were excited about, right? We were sitting there saying, okay, we're good at this, it's making you money, what's the big deal? And it eventually got to a point where he said, well, I'm not going to let you hire anymore, right? You guys are on a hiring freeze. This is not really the business we want to be in. And we told him, we said, look, that is what we want to do. That's what the team wants to do. We're excited about the growth. If we can't do that, we're going to leave. And he called our bluff, and we left. Fair enough. We realized when we were leaving, the 4 most senior people in the unit, well, they had a big liability in terms of they had 150-something clients that they weren't going to necessarily be able to service without the 4 most senior people there. So what we proposed was, okay, what if we make an offer on buying out the unit? You don't want to grow it, we don't want to stay here. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense for you to just let it languish. What if we try and buy it out? He reluctantly agreed to hear us out. He suggested that we go get breakfast at, this is the Fairmont Hotel, beautiful space in Nob Hill in San Francisco. If you have about $500, $600 a night for a hotel room, highly recommended. And we sat down at breakfast and we presented what we thought was a really reasonable and fair offer, considering we had no funding. We were scrapping this together at the last minute, and again, if he didn't sell this to us, he was going to need to sell it in a fire sale to someone else. This is the CEO of an 800, 900 person company. He was so upset with the offer and took such offense to the offer that he stuck me with the tab. It was a $182 breakfast to be exact. And it was me and my CEO and the CEO of Meltwater at the time. And we saved the receipt. I mean, it was just such a surreal experience. And in fact, the first year that we started Metric Theory, the password for just about everything at the company was Fairmont 182. We've since changed it. We've been told that's not a good idea from a security standpoint. But it was a $182 breakfast that he stuck us with, and he kind of stormed out. And what came from there, you know, we were really passionate about our team. We had a team of 30 over there. We wanted to give plenty of notice. I mean, we'd given 8 weeks notice. We told them we wanted a smooth transition. We promised that we were not going to try and touch a single one of the clients, you know, that Metric Theory had, or Meltwater, sorry, had. And what we learned was good intentions don't always matter, and we received some legal threats from the CEO of the company. It didn't amount to anything because we hadn't done anything wrong. I think my one takeaway, like, you're splitting off from a company to start your own company, just leave and do it, right? Don't tell the CEO and bring upon a whole world of complications. It was especially helpful. My mother is a lawyer, and we basically got some free legal advice, which was effectively, don't panic, he's not going to do anything, but this is exactly what I'd do if I had 4 scared kids with no freaking clue what they're doing, is I'd threaten the hell out of them and try and get them to sign a bunch of stuff. So takeaway from that is, yeah, try and stay under the radar. So when we launched, this is our original office. That's my co-founder, CEO's 1-bedroom apartment in the Marina in San Francisco. This was very much the cliche San Francisco startup story. It's down South Bay, you started out of a garage. In SF, we don't have garages, so you just do it in a 1-bedroom apartment. So we started out, we didn't have much going on for us, right? The CEO not only didn't sell us the unit in the company, he stuck us with some legal threats. So we got started with no funding. We got started with no clients. We did have an office cat named Leo, who's still with us. You know, we made the most of it. That's Jenny and Amanda are 2 of our original founding team members who are still with the company. That's our COO, Jeff, trying to close a deal in the background. You can see some whiteboards stacked up on the side. But we made it work. I think one of the great things about a services company is you don't need a lot of capital to get started, right? Like what you're selling is your brain power to attack a certain business problem. And so, especially if you don't have office space, you don't have overhead to develop a product, to have to hire a bunch of engineers, whatever it may be, you can just kind of get going. In terms of the original team, I think every company is different in this regard, but for us, there's no way any one of us could have started this company, right? We had very complementary experiences, strengths, weaknesses, and so without spending too much time on this, I think I watched a couple of the other videos of previous speakers, and some were more passionate about you should or shouldn't have co-founders. I think it really depends on the business that you're starting. One thing that I will say, our co-founder Jeff did not have any background at all in paid search advertising or Facebook advertising, which is the skill that we were effectively selling to our clients. He was a business school grad, he was a Stanford business school grad, and I think what the advantage was there when you start a company, if you're going to start a company that grows, there's just so much stuff that you never would have thought of that you have to take care of, right? Like selecting a healthcare plan for your employees. You have to put together a handbook in terms of what is appropriate, behavior so that you're protected in a legal sense. Picking out systems for payroll, for, other HR documentation. I have heard from a lot of different founders of companies that you get bogged down in all of that and you don't get a chance to actually work on what you excel at, right? Which for us especially, was doing a really good job of helping companies make more money off of their Google and Facebook advertising. So I would say if you have a co-founder, you have an original hire who can help with some of that stuff, it's going to allow you to focus more on what the core of your actual business is. Cool. So I know I'm supposed to be focusing on some of the challenges that we faced, and I think there were different challenges at different stages of the company. First one, which I won't spend too long on, is just the tricky part when you do have other founders is figuring out the ownership allocation. I think the one thing that I'd point to there, try and think about what each other's roles are going to be 3 to 5 years in the future, not just what every partner is going to bring to the relationship right off the bat, because that's going to change in a lot of cases, right? The person who might be most vital in the first year, that's not necessarily going to be the case down the line. And that makes the incorporation of the company really important. I mean, seeing the Facebook effect and there's a lot of it in popular media around the Facebook story now, but it is really important to make sure that you guys have a good idea of what the breakdown is early on. I think we did that well. I think something I also say is it's probably inevitable in any company where you have multiple co-founders that someone's going to feel like the allocation is unfair at some point along the way. And I know that my co-founders have felt that at different times. I know that I've felt that at different times. And so what I'd say is that's why it's important to think about not just, oh, we're excited we're starting a company together, but what's it going to look like in the future? It's like any long-term relationship. You want to be on the same page in terms of what the goals are for all of the parties involved before you jump in. Landing a few initial team members, we kind of had to tiptoe around this. There were a few people from our old team that said, please take us with you. And we were a little cautious because of the legal threats. So I don't know how relevant that is to other businesses, but I think, again, we were maybe overly cautious. We were more cautious than we needed to be. And you have someone you can talk to understand, okay, am I doing something wrong or am I not doing something wrong? If I'm not, then don't worry about the threats, you go ahead and do it. The funding piece, I think, is relevant. We started with no money. So what does that mean? I think it means, one, you have to start with certain sacrifices. You know, for us, our main cost centers are salaries, office space, and our technology partner. So office space, yeah, we had a 1-bedroom apartment that we worked out of until we were about to kill each other about 5-6 months in. There's 7 of us in there. The technology partner, I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, but they were amenable to giving us a little bit of leeway. On the salary piece, we didn't pay ourselves for the first 6 months. And I think that was something that we'd agreed to in principle and in theory, but we hadn't thought that far out on. But you should understand basically what are the sacrifices that each founder is able to or willing to make. I was the youngest of the 4 founders. I guess I am the youngest of the 4 founders. That doesn't change. You know, I would start the company. I was single. I was 26. This was not a big deal, as big of a deal for me because, you know, I had some money saved up and I knew how long that I could live off of that. You know, founders who have kids, that's a different story, right? And that's a much scarier proposition to just indefinitely go without money. So I think whatever sacrifice you decide that you need to make if you are starting a company without funding, that goes if you're starting your own company, right? Like, if you're starting your own company, I think you need to be honest with yourself about what you are willing to give up before you get to a point where it's too much. And that's something that we could have thought out a little bit differently. Another surprising initial challenge was naming the company. It's shockingly difficult to find a company name that kind of makes sense for your industry and that has no available domain. If you're ever looking for something to do when you're at the bar having a few beers with your friends, start thinking of company names because it'll come in more handy than you would expect. We very narrowly avoided disaster here. We thought about the company name for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you can't really start a company and start calling clients or prospective clients without a name. And what we settled on that I convinced them was our best option at the time was ROI Zoo, which, if it's not immediately apparent, it's kind of a goofy name for a company that's trying to work with larger Fortune 500 technology companies and be taken seriously as a startup. Naming the company was surprisingly difficult. It's one of those things, again, like if you can show some foresight and knock out the small stuff, when it's time to go and it's time to really start a company, you want to have as much time as possible to dedicate toward starting the actual company. To the benefit of the other 3 co-founders and to the detriment of me, this did make for a really exceptional April Fool's joke our first year as a company. I'd received an email. We always joked I'd already bought the domain for roizoo.com, and I always made the joke that, yeah, someday someone's going to buy the domain. We're going to make a lot of money off of it. I received an email about a week before from some Gmail account saying that they wanted to buy the domain. I told you guys, someone wants to buy this. Concurrently, they put up an ad on Craigslist that directed people to my cell phone on April Fool's Day. So I was in a conference room and I was getting a bunch of calls nonstop. We won't go into what the calls were for, but that I figured out right away, right? I was like, no, I can't believe these jerks did this. I come storming out of the conference room after I've gotten 20 of these calls. I'm yelling at my partners, like, what are you doing? Like, this is a complete waste of time. These lunatics have my cell phone number, and I'll tell you what, not a single one of you is going to get a dime of, and then it hit me that was the other part of the joke, was that no one was actually trying to buy roizoo.com for $5,000. So they were rolling on the floor laughing. I was annoyed, would be an understatement, but it at least led to a lot of fun there. Some of our initial challenges beyond that were maybe a little more unique to us. We use a software I mentioned called Kenshu to provide our services. It's really expensive. I think now at our size it runs us about $70,000 a month in fees to them. they have a minimum of, I think it's like $10,000 a month for any client, right? And we didn't have that money to start. Fortunately, we had worked with them before. We knew their COO because that's who we'd worked with directly, and we knew at Meltwater we were one of the fastest growing agencies that they'd ever worked with. I think one, you never know how the relationships you've had at previous companies might come back to help you and benefit you down the road. But we were able to negotiate with these guys where they legitimately, as a show of faith, were not going to charge us for the first 4 months, and were then going to give us pricing that was generally reserved for agencies that were 3, 4, 5 times our size right off the bat. Winning clients without any existing clients is tough. I think that was one of the toughest parts, is like it's tough to generate forward momentum when you're at a dead stop on day one. I think about, do you have ways to get someone in the door, right? Do you have someone who you know would be interested in your products or your services, who's going to serve as a big advocate for you and provide references if you need them to? And so we found a couple of clients that weren't with Meltwater, but friends and family, and they were smaller companies, where we said, look, we're going to run your campaigns, your advertising campaigns for free. We need you to be our biggest champion if we have clients looking for referrals. And that was huge, right? I mean, because it's that first client even makes a difference. You're on a sales call and they ask you, okay, how many clients do you guys have? 0 is a tough answer to give, right? 1 isn't great and 2 isn't great, but it is quite literally infinitely better than having to answer 0. So I think figure out a way that you can have some initial clients that are going to be advocates for you and help sell for you. Questions on any of that? Now I've been kind of rambling. Cool. Some of our infancy challenges. Office space and infrastructure. Again, these are not like the big, exciting challenges that you think of when you start a company. It's not the we need to sit around a room until, around a table until a light bulb goes off. But it's really important, right? When you're working with no funding especially, and you're working with really narrow margins, well, things like an office space investment, that's a pretty big investment to consider, right? When we moved into our first office space in SF in early 2013, there were 7 of us and we were about to hire 4 more people, which was why we needed to move out of the apartment. But I mean, our costs as a company were still, and pay ourselves salary, it was hardly anything. It was $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, and that office space was going to be $12,000 a month, right? So you're talking about more than doubling your cost. Even as we grew, this was a bigger trade-off, right? Because most office spaces, they want you to sign a 3-year or 5-year lease. Well, if you're adding, 10, 15, 20 new people each year, you don't have the money to sign for a 60-person office space. That's going to be prohibitively expensive. You're also going to get burned if you sign a 3-year lease in an office space that you're going to outgrow in a year. So I think planning out that could be a corollary for any other costs that don't just scale, right? You're talking about hosting space or server costs, that's going to scale pretty proportionately. Think about the things that don't scale proportionally and when you're going to need to make bigger infrastructure investments. I think the fundamental challenge that we faced at the beginning, we faced early on, we still face now, is just the trade-off between growth and profitability for the business. So we provide services, so we need to hire people on my team that can manage accounts, to sell our services. And so there are some economies of scale as we grow, but the same way, the same thing you'd see at a law firm, the same thing you'd see at an accounting firm, to a certain degree, law firm can't grow their revenues unless they have more lawyers. Accounting firm can't grow their revenue unless they have more accountants, and hiring is expensive. So same as the office space, you're in this constant battle of, okay, we could hire, I'll talk about our hiring strategy, we hire almost entirely people with no experience in what we do. There's some reasons for that. You hire 4 people, you're gonna train them for 6 to 8 months before they're ever contributing $1 to your bottom line. If you don't hire those people now, that's gonna impact your ability to take on clients 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road. So I think understanding that trade-off, this interestingly plays into kind of where if you have co-founders, where each partner, where each founder is at in terms of what you guys want out of the business. For me, it was I wanted to grow as quickly as possible, right? Profitability in the first few years was not as important as, okay, we can always scale back the hiring, we can always scale back on costs. You can't just snap your fingers and accelerate the growth, 3 years in the future. So the other founders, very understandably, was, okay, we've been taking a well below market rate salary for a few years now. We did start paying ourselves, just not a ton the first couple of years. No, I'm not as comfortable taking a below market salary for another 2-3 years. So I think that trade-off is something that, there's not a right answer. It's you need to be aligned, or even if it's just you be honest with yourself about what you want to get out of it. Differentiation and competitive advantage as a services company. I think this is important for any type of company or startup. It's especially tough when what you're selling is services. You think about it again for more traditional service companies, if it's a law firm or an accounting firm, why is one law firm better than another? I mean, more than anything because they have better lawyers, right? It's contingent on each individual person. It's not a product. It's not a Nike shoe that's going to be the same wherever it's produced or wherever it's sold. And so, I think something that wasn't real apparent for us in the first couple of years, where we were just like, head down, we've got to focus on selling, signing new clients, servicing those clients. We started to invest a lot more in kind of our brand as a company, our thought leadership. So what does that mean? This services company, it means having a blog that people, consistently go to for thoughts on whether it's a new Google release that comes out and impacts other advertisers, or how they can maximize their revenue in the holidays. It means starting to apply for different awards, which I'll talk about in a second. It's all of that. So think about how you're going to differentiate yourself, right? If you're starting a company that something similar already exists, you should be asking yourself from the outset, why are we different? Like in 30 seconds, can I actually describe to someone why they should even think about using my service, my product, whatever it is that you're selling instead of whatever else is out there. I touched on this already, the owners living without funds. Again, I think it was different for each person. For me, this was not as big of a sacrifice as admittedly for my co-founder Jeff, who was trying to apply to a bunch of really expensive Bay Area preschools with his 3-year-old.